Welcome to the many interpretations of Postosuchus, the Rausuchid that lived in the late Triassic of what is now North America. I'm pretty excited for this one. We haven't talked about too many Pseudotsuchians overall, so one like Postosuchus is, I think, a very good one. If you don't know, Pseudotsuchia is essentially a clade of archosaurs, which means that they are related to dinosaurs because dinosaurs are archosaurs too, but they were just on different paths, different branches essentially. Postosuchus was more so like on the croc lineage of Archosauria, whereas dinosaurs were on the bird lineage. So related, but not the same, of course. Anyway, now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So first we have Dinosaurs, released in 1992. I assume that this fella right here is Postosuchus because the skull shape seems to match up and the overall body shape seems pretty similar to the animal. So it is portrayed as being sort of a quadrupedal animal here, which is something that is likely different for the animal. So in the past, it was believed that Postosuchus was primarily a quadrupedal animal, meaning it walked on all fours. More recent analysis suggests that it was mostly a biped, which means it walked on its hind limbs. This is due to the fact that its forelimbs are incredibly similar to theropod dinosaurs, as well as the weight-bearing vertebrae being a lot more similar to theropod dinosaurs, which of course are bipedal animals. Now, this doesn't mean that Postosuchus couldn't walk quadrupedally every once in a while, but it just seems likely that it was mostly a biped. Aside from that, it is incredibly shrink-wrapped, which is very common for this era in paleontology. You know, a lot of prehistoric animal depictions were very shrink-wrapped, so much so that you can really see these fenestrae, which are those openings in the skull. Postosuchus had quite a few of them, of course. Its skull was very filled with holes, pretty much. But other than that, not bad. You know, the skeleton seems to match up pretty well, and it's a pretty decent start. After that is the very famous Walking with Dinosaurs Postosuchus. This one's very good. You know, it's a very cool and like well-made depiction of Postosuchus. Both the practical effects and the CGI look top-notch. And it's really cool that we get to spend as much time as we do with the animal, especially considering the fact that it wasn't a dinosaur. Most of the time, dinosaurs would take most of the spotlight, but this time, you know, Postosuchus took up a little bit of the spotlight, which I liked that. Again, it is portrayed as a quadrupedal animal, something we do know was not entirely the case. The skull looks really good, the body looks really good, and I love these colors. These are probably the best colors that I've seen on Postosuchus. It also does have osteoderms, something that Postosuchus did have. Osteoderms, if you don't know, are bones that grow in the skin. Crocodiles have them today. You know, we often refer to them as scutes. Armadillos have osteoderms. Their shell. That's an osteoderm. But this one's really good. You know, I think it'd be really cool to see it a little bit more updated, you know, nowadays, because of course this was pretty accurate for the time. It's just, you know, we learn more with more fossil discoveries and with more analysis of different fossils. So, you know, we learn that, you know, depictions like this are a little bit more outdated. But all around, I love this one. I think it's fantastic. Next up is Dinosaurs Alive. We get this seemingly kind of small one. Now, Postosuchus was roughly about the size of a lion. You know, it wasn't incredibly huge or anything like that, but it seems very small right here as it kind of chases after some Coelophysis. Now, you could say that this is a young one, you know, a young Postosuchus, and that could also explain why it's incredibly quadrupedal here, because it's also suspected that younger individuals were able to walk more quadrupedally, because their forelimbs are closer in size to their hind limbs. Now, of course, its proportions in this don't really match up to that. It's just a fun little thing. Other than that, the skull looks really good. The rest of the body looks really good. It is covered in osteoderms, and it's another pretty good appearance. Now we have it in Jurassic World Alive. So I'm not really a big fan of this one. As you could probably tell from the other depictions we've looked at, Postosuchus has a very robust skull. This one seems like incredibly thin with a head that is very small overall. Also, the limbs are just a lot more proportional, you know. The forelimbs seem closer in size to the hind limbs, which is something that isn't really true for Postosuchus. And of course, it is quadrupedal here, and it is dragging its tail too, which is not something I think we've seen with Postosuchus yet. But it does have the osteoderms. That is probably the closest thing to it. But yeah, this one I'm not too big of a fan of. Then we have Paleopines, and we finally have our bipedal Postosuchus. And I love it. Look how cool this looks. Of course, it is incredibly stylized. You know, Paleopines is a very stylized game. But I've said it many times, and I'll probably say it many more times. I like it because it like really keeps accuracy in mind, but it stylizes, like it builds off of that. You know, it stylizes from there. It has a basis, it has a baseline, then it builds up from there. And that feels pretty true with this Postosuchus. The head looks good, the body looks really good, it has its osteoderms, it's bipedal, forelimbs look good, the hind limbs look really good, and a lot of these colors look really cool. So I love this one. This is one of my favorites so far. I think it's a great, great depiction. And then we have the Minecraft mod Prehistoric Nature. I love this one too. Everything looks fantastic about it. Again, it is bipedal right here. The colors are a little bit more reminiscent to the colors that we see in Walking with Dinosaurs, with that sort of rusty red coloration and like some small hints of white and some yellows. It looks so cool. The osteoderms are present. Head looks really good. Again, the forelimbs look good. The hind limbs look good. Everything about it looks really good. And it also seems to be around the correct size, you know, in relation to your Minecraft character. So again, another one that is incredibly accurate for our understanding of the animal. So that's the end of Postosuchus, but I didn't want to leave it at that, so I decided to bring in one more creature that probably wouldn't get its own video, and that's Facilosuchus. Facilosuchus was an incredibly huge pseudotsuchian that also lived in the late Triassic. Fossil material is incredibly limited, but it does seem like it had a length of around 8 to 10 meters, or 26 to 33 feet, potentially making it the largest non-dinosaur land predator to ever walk the earth, you know, surpassing creatures like Barenosuchus. Again, fossil material is limited, but that is still really cool to note. It does not have a lot of appearances either. I only know of 2, but those 2 are going to show up on this list. First up in 65. Now in 65, this giant quadrupedal T-Rex looking creature is actually Facilosuchus. Now Facilosuchus might have been quadrupedal. I'm not too sure about that because again, fossil material is limited, but I'll tell you this for free. It's oversized. Of course, you know, as I mentioned, it was a large animal, but it certainly wasn't on par with Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tyrannosaurus Rex was incredibly massive in its own right, and Facilosuchus didn't quite make it to that size. At least from what we can gauge from the available fossil material. I'd say overall it's unlikely for it to reach that size. It's also in the wrong time. Of course, it shows up in the late Cretaceous period towards the very bitter end, you know, 66 million years ago, when in reality it lived in the late Triassic. So it was long extinct by the time this happened. It was already fossils by the time this happened. It also has very jagged interlocking teeth and overall has just a very basic kind of movie monster look about it. It's very interesting. It's probably one of the most interesting extinct creature designs that we've ever seen. When I first saw the show, the movie, I thought it was like a fictional theropod dinosaur that was quadrupedal. But it turns out it was a real animal, which is just very interesting. And then after that is in Ark, Survival Ascended, I assume. There is a Facilosuchus that looks pretty cool. You know, it's pretty stylized for Ark. It is a little bit more monsterized as too, but you know, Facilosuchus is still known from very limited fossil material. It's very spiky. It does have osteoderms, which is probably likely for Facilosuchus, considering the fact that it was a pseudotsuchian, and something like that seems very common for that lineage. I just think it looks really interesting, especially with some of this concept art where you can see how the throat is a little bit more red and you have these kind of hints of blue throughout the rest of the body. You know, overall, I think it's really interesting. But as far as I know, those are the 2 depictions of Facilosuchus in media, along with the very limited appearances of Postosuchus. Not a lot of these guys, of course, which kind of surprises me, especially Postosuchus. Postosuchus was popularized in Walking with Dinosaurs. At least that's how I feel most people learned about the animal. That's certainly where I learned about the animal. So I think that, you know, a creature like that kind of has the potential to be really cool to see on screen would show up a little bit more, but sadly, it has not yet. Maybe that'll change in the future. We have certainly seen a huge uptick in prehistoric media as of late, so there's more and more of an opportunity for that to happen. It likely won't show up in the rebooted 2025 Walking with Dinosaurs, though. That I haven't mentioned this yet, but from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a single Triassic episode in the new Walking with Dinosaurs, which kind of disappoints me, because the Triassic period is a point in time that is very seldom talked about. If anything, it's talked about in very brief snippets in some documentaries. And then we move on to the much more well-known Jurassic, and then of course the even more well-known Cretaceous. So I think that we could certainly use a little bit more Triassic in our paleo media. So hopefully we get to see more of it in the future, more of Facilosuchus and more of Postosuchus. That's what I hope for, but only time will tell. Anyway, that is pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and especially thank you to my channel members and my patrons. You guys are really helping out a lot, and I really do appreciate you. But until next time, Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day.